Imagine an empire so vast it dominated nearly half the known world. A kingdom where roads cut across continents, messengers rode without rest, and kings ruled with justice and power. This is the legacy of the Persian Empire. But how did it emerge? And how did everything crumble before a handful of stubborn Greeks? In the 6th century before Christ, while Athens and Sparta were still taking their first steps, a man named Cyrus the Great forged the largest empire the world had ever seen. His successors, like Darius and Xerxes, brought Persia to its pinnacle, but also to confrontation with Greece in wars that would shape the destiny of the Western world. Today you will discover how the Persians built an empire and how it collapsed before 300 Spartans. The story begins in the harsh highlands of what we now call Iran, where nomadic tribes united under the banner of a visionary leader. Cyrus wasn't just a conqueror, he was a revolutionary who understood that lasting power comes not from fear, but from respect. As his armies marched through Babylon, Egypt, and the gates of India, he offered something unprecedented to the conquered: freedom to keep their customs, their gods, and their ways of life. What made this ancient superpower so different from others? While the Assyrians before them ruled through terror, the Persians created the world's first truly multicultural empire. They built roads stretching thousands of miles, invented the world's first efficient postal system, and even established an early form of human rights. Yet despite their innovations and tolerance, this mighty civilization would eventually face its greatest challenge from the small, fractious city-states of Greece. It's a tale of clashing cultures, monumental pride, and the unexpected ways that history can turn on the decisions of a single ruler. If you love history and want to unravel the secrets of the great empires, like this video, subscribe to the Legacy of Empires channel and don't miss a single episode. It all began with a king who conquered not only with swords, but with wisdom. Born in what we now call southwestern Iran, around 590 before Christ, Cyrus emerged from relative obscurity to become one of history's most revolutionary leaders. While other conquerors of his time ruled through fear and brutality, Cyrus understood something profound. An empire built on respect would last far longer than one built on terror. The story of Persian dominance starts with a stunning upset. The Persian tribes had long lived under the shadow of their more powerful neighbors, the Medes. As a young prince, Cyrus gathered the fractured Persian clans under his banner and did the unthinkable. He overthrew his grandfather, the Median king Astyages, uniting both peoples under Persian rule. This wasn't just another bloody coup. It was the birth of a new kind of power. What made Cyrus truly remarkable was what he did after victory. When his armies conquered the legendary city of Babylon in 539 before Christ, the world expected the usual aftermath of ancient conquest: slavery, destruction, and misery. Instead, Cyrus walked through the famous Ishtar Gate and proclaimed freedom for all peoples within his new realm. This wasn't empty rhetoric. Cyrus freed the Jews who had been held captive in Babylon for decades, allowing them to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. The gratitude was so profound that the Jewish texts refer to him as the Anointed One, a title rarely given to non-Jewish rulers. His famous cylinder, now housed in the British Museum, records what might be the world's first declaration of human rights. It proclaimed religious freedom throughout his territories and established a model of governance where local customs were respected rather than erased. Cyrus built his capital at Pasargadae, creating a stunning city that reflected the diversity of his empire. The architecture deliberately blended styles from all conquered territories. Babylonian, Egyptian, Median, and Persian elements stood side by side, a physical representation of his multicultural vision. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Cyrus is how he managed his image. Unlike the Assyrian kings before him, who glorified their brutality in art and inscription, Cyrus portrayed himself as a shepherd tending to his people. He understood the power of perception thousands of years before modern public relations. And here's a remarkable detail about the man who ruled half the known world. When he died in battle against nomadic tribes in 530 before Christ, he requested a strikingly simple tomb. No golden monuments or lavish treasures, just a modest stone chamber with a single inscription. "O man, I am Cyrus, who founded the Persian Empire. Do not begrudge me this plot of earth that covers my body." This stark contrast between the grandeur of his achievements and the simplicity of his final resting place speaks volumes about the character of the man who built the world's first true superpower. His legacy would shape empire building for centuries to come, influencing everyone from Alexander the Great to modern concepts of multicultural governance. The Persian Empire under Cyrus wasn't just big, it was revolutionary. If Cyrus built the empire, Darius was the one who kept it standing. When Darius ascended to the throne in 522 before Christ, he faced an immediate crisis. Rebellions erupted in nearly every corner of the vast Persian domains. Lesser rulers might have crumbled under such pressure, but Darius wasn't just any king. He crushed all 19 rebellions in a single year, personally leading his armies in 16 battles. But his true genius wasn't on the battlefield, it was in what came after. Understanding that conquering was easier than governing, Darius transformed the Persian Empire from a collection of subjugated territories into the ancient world's first truly functional bureaucratic state. His innovations were centuries ahead of their time. The crown jewel of his administrative revolution was the Royal Road, a highway stretching nearly 1,500 miles from Sardis in modern Turkey all the way to Susa in Iran. This wasn't just any road, it was the information superhighway of the ancient world. Along its carefully maintained path, imperial messengers could travel the entire distance in just 7 days, a journey that would take an ordinary traveler 90 days to complete. The Persian postal system became legendary for its efficiency, as the Greek historian Herodotus famously wrote, "Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor darkness of night prevents these couriers from completing their designated stages with utmost speed." Sound familiar? The United States Postal Service borrowed this very motto thousands of years later. Darius was nothing if not practical. Recognizing the chaos of multiple currencies across his vast territories, he introduced the daric, the world's first standardized gold coin. With a weight precisely fixed at 8.4 grams, these coins revolutionized trade throughout the empire and became so trusted that they continued circulating for 2 centuries after Persia's fall. Perhaps his most enduring innovation was dividing the empire into 23 satrapies or provinces, each under a governor or satrap. Each province had clear tax obligations to the central government, but maintained significant autonomy in local affairs. This brilliant balance between central authority and regional freedom became the template for empire management for millennia to come. But being king of kings came with constant dangers. Behind the scenes, Darius lived with the perpetual threat of assassination and betrayal. Court intrigue was so pervasive that he reportedly wore a special poison ring, a kind of emergency suicide device that would allow him to die quickly rather than face torture if captured by enemies or betrayers. Imagine living your entire life knowing that at any moment you might need to twist your own ring to escape an even worse fate. Despite these pressures, Darius found time to be a patron of arts and culture. Under his rule, Persepolis was transformed into one of the ancient world's most stunning cities. He established a legal code that formalized many of Cyrus's humanitarian principles and even sent expeditions to explore the Indus River and Mediterranean coastlines. When Darius died in 486 before Christ, He left behind an empire not just held together by force, but bound by roads, currency, laws, and administrative systems that had turned a conqueror's prize into history's most sophisticated ancient state. Without the organizational genius of Darius, the Persian Empire might have collapsed shortly after Cyrus. Instead, it would endure for another 2 centuries as the superpower of its age. But not everything was roses, and one strategic error would ignite the fuse of war. On the western edge of the Persian Empire lay Ionia, a region along the coast of modern-day Turkey populated by Greek colonists. These Greeks had lived under Persian rule for decades, but they enjoyed significant autonomy under the empire's flexible governance. So what went wrong? The trouble began around 500 before Christ, when ambitious Greek tyrants, men who had been installed by the Persians to govern these cities, started plotting against their masters. Leading the charge was Aristagoras of Miletus, a man whose political gambles would change the course of history. When his personal ambitions were frustrated, Aristagoras did something unprecedented. He traveled across the Aegean Sea to mainland Greece, seeking help from their independent city-states. Most Greek cities prudently declined to pick a fight with the world's superpower, but Athens, young, democratic, and filled with revolutionary fervor, made a fateful decision. They sent 20 ships to support their Ionian cousins. What followed was a stunning act of defiance. The Athenian-supported rebels marched inland and burned Sardis, one of the Persian Empire's major administrative centers. For the first time, the Persian colossus had been wounded by what they considered insignificant Greek upstarts. When news of the burning of Sardis reached King Darius, his rage was boundless. According to Herodotus, he appointed a servant to whisper in his ear before every meal, "Master, remember the Athenians." Imagine such hatred that you needed to be reminded of it each time you sat down to eat. The Persians quickly crushed the Ionian revolt, but Darius's eyes now turned westward toward Athens itself. In 490 before Christ, the Persian Empire launched its first expedition to punish the Athenians. With a massive invasion force, they landed at Marathon, just 26 miles from Athens. The Athenians, outnumbered and with minimal support from other Greek cities, faced what seemed like certain defeat. What happened next would become one of history's most celebrated military upsets. The smaller Athenian force, under the brilliant general Miltiades, used their heavy infantry to smash through the Persian center. The Greeks lost just 192 men, while the Persians suffered casualties in the thousands. According to legend, a messenger named Pheidippides ran the entire distance from Marathon to Athens to announce the victory with his last breath, giving birth to the modern marathon race. For the mighty Persian Empire, used to crushing all opposition, Marathon was more than a military defeat. It was a profound humiliation. An empire that controlled lands from the Indus River to Egypt had been beaten by a single Greek city-state with an army of citizen soldiers. Darius immediately began planning a much larger invasion to crush Greece once and for all. Heralds were sent to every corner of the empire, gathering what would be the largest expeditionary force the ancient world had ever seen. But fate had other plans. Before he could lead this massive army against Athens, Darius died in 486 before Christ, his oath of vengeance unfulfilled. And did you know that Darius died before he could take revenge on Athens? If you're enjoying this video, like, share, and subscribe to the Legacy of Empires channel. Comment below. Who do you think was greater, Cyrus or Darius? Darius's son, Xerxes, inherited the throne and a thirst for vengeance. When Xerxes ascended to power in 486 before Christ, he found himself ruling the world's greatest empire, yet living in the shadow of an unfulfilled promise. His father's dying wish had been clear: punish Athens. What began as a matter of imperial security had become a question of family honor, and Xerxes was determined to succeed where his father had failed. For 5 years, the young king prepared what would become the most ambitious military campaign of the ancient world. Resources poured in from every corner of the empire: grain from Egypt, ships from Phoenicia, gold from Lydia, and soldiers from dozens of subject nations. The result was a force so massive that even ancient historians struggled to believe their own numbers. Herodotus claimed the Persian army numbered 2,700,000 men, almost certainly an exaggeration, but modern historians still estimate a force of around 200,000 troops. Just the logistics of feeding such an army was a feat unmatched until modern times. But before this massive force could march on Greece, it faced a significant geographical obstacle: the Hellespont, the narrow strait separating Asia from Europe that we now call the Dardanelles. Rather than ferry his troops across over many weeks, Xerxes ordered something unprecedented: a bridge made of ships. His engineers lashed together hundreds of vessels side by side, covered them with wooden planks, and even added railings so no soldier would fall into the water during the crossing. And here comes one of history's most bizarre moments. When a violent storm destroyed this first attempt at a bridge, Xerxes flew into a rage unlike any other. He ordered the waters of the Hellespont to be whipped 300 times with chains. Imagine that scene: royal executioners standing at the shore, literally flogging the sea while shouting insults at the water. Xerxes even had branding irons thrust into the waves to punish the strait for its disobedience. He then beheaded the engineers responsible for the failed bridge before ordering a second, successful attempt. As the massive Persian force finally entered Greece in 480 before Christ, they encountered little resistance. At first, most Greek city-states either surrendered or remained neutral. Only a handful, led by Athens and Sparta, stood defiant. The Greeks chose to make their stand at a narrow coastal pass called Thermopylae, the Hot Gates. Here, King Leonidas of Sparta led a force of just 300 elite Spartan warriors, supported by several thousand allies from other Greek states. For 3 days, this small Greek force held back the entire Persian army, inflicting shocking casualties on the world's greatest military power. A Greek traitor eventually revealed a mountain path that allowed the Persians to encircle Leonidas. In one of history's most famous last stands, the Spartan king dismissed most of his allies, keeping only his 300 Spartans and a small number of Thebans and Thespians. They fought to the last man, buying crucial time for the rest of Greece to prepare. With the path now clear, Xerxes marched south and achieved what his father had dreamed of. He captured and burned Athens to the ground. Victory seemed certain. But the Athenians had evacuated their city, moving their population to the nearby island of Salamis. There, in the narrow waters between the island and the mainland, the smaller Greek fleet lured the massive Persian navy into a trap. In tight quarters, where the Persians couldn't use their numerical advantage, the Greek ships rammed and sank the enemy vessels one after another. Xerxes watched the humiliating defeat from a golden throne erected on a nearby hillside. In a single day, Persian naval supremacy was shattered. With supply lines stretched thin and winter approaching, Xerxes was forced to retreat to Asia with much of his army, leaving his general Mardonius with a still formidable force to continue the campaign the following year. But at the Battle of Plataea in 479 before Christ, the united Greek army decisively defeated the remaining Persian forces, ending the invasion once and for all. Xerxes survived the failure of his great expedition, but his reputation did not. He retreated into palace life, focusing on architectural projects rather than military campaigns. 20 years after his great invasion failed, he was assassinated in his bedroom, a once mighty king of kings brought low by court intrigue. The Persian attack on Greece had been meant to punish a minor irritant on the edge of a vast empire. Instead, it united the Greeks, sparked their golden age, and shifted the center of civilization westward. From this epic stumble, the course of world history would be forever changed. Persia lost the wars, but its impact echoed throughout history. After Xerxes' defeat, the Persian Empire continued for another 150 years, still wealthy and powerful, but never again did it seriously threaten the Greek mainland. The empire's glory days were behind it, and when a young Macedonian king named Alexander marched east in 334 before Christ, the once mighty Persian Empire collapsed with surprising speed. But here's the fascinating irony of history. In defeating Persia, Alexander became Persian in many ways. Though he conquered their empire, he was conquered by their culture. The young Macedonian, who started his campaign as a Greek avenger, ended it wearing Persian robes, marrying Persian wives, and adopting Persian court ceremonies. When Alexander looked for a way to govern his vast new territories, he didn't create something new. He simply took over the Persian administrative system that Darius had perfected centuries earlier. The genius of the Persian satrapy system, those semi-autonomous provinces, became the blueprint for nearly every empire that followed. The Romans, who considered themselves heirs to Greek civilization, nonetheless adopted Persian methods of provincial governance. Even today, modern federal systems with their balance of central authority and local autonomy owe an unacknowledged debt to Persian innovation. The royal road that Darius built became the Silk Road of later eras, the main artery of east-west trade for over 2,000 years. Even the concept of rapid communication across vast distances, the Persian postal system, became a cornerstone of every successful empire that followed. Perhaps most remarkably, Persian concepts of religious tolerance and multicultural governance survived long after their military defeat. The Cyrus Cylinder, a clay document from 539 before Christ that records Cyrus's conquest of Babylon, is now recognized as the world's first declaration of human rights. In it, Cyrus proclaims religious freedom for all peoples under his rule and establishes principles of cultural respect that were revolutionary for their time. When the United Nations headquarters in New York displays a replica of this ancient cylinder, it acknowledges an uncomfortable truth. Concepts we consider modern, religious freedom, cultural rights, protection of minorities, were pioneered not in democratic Athens, but in imperial Persia. The Persian language itself, far from dying with the empire, evolved into modern Farsi and continues to be spoken by over 100 million people today. Persian poetry, particularly the works of Hafez, Rumi, and Omar Khayyam, became some of the most beloved literature in world history, inspiring Western writers from Goethe to Emerson. Even Persian architecture outlived the empire. The four-quartered garden design known as Chahar Bagh became the template for paradise gardens across the Islamic world and eventually inspired European formal gardens. The massive columned halls of Persepolis influenced building designs from ancient Greece to Napoleonic France. In our modern world, we often focus on the victors of history, the Greeks who defeated Xerxes, Alexander who conquered Persia. But sometimes the most enduring victory belongs to the defeated. Though Persia lost the wars, its administrative systems, its concepts of governance, its artistic traditions, and its architectural innovations have shaped human civilization ever since. In a profound way, the Persian Empire achieved something rare in history. It lost battles, but won the larger cultural war. 2,500 years after Cyrus the Great first established his revolutionary empire, we still live in a world shaped by Persian innovation. The true measure of a civilization isn't always its military success, but the depth and durability of its ideas. By that measure, ancient Persia stands among history's greatest achievements, an empire whose greatest conquests weren't made by armies, but by ideas that continue to influence our world today. The Persian Empire demonstrated that even the mightiest giants can fall, but their ideas endured. Cyrus and Darius proved that ruling is more than conquering. It's about creating systems that outlast their creators, establishing principles that transcend borders, and recognizing that true power lies not in destruction, but in construction. Xerxes taught us the ancient lesson that pride comes before a fall. With all the resources of the world's greatest superpower at his command, he still couldn't overcome the determination of a handful of Greek city-states fighting for their freedom. His story reminds us that military might alone doesn't guarantee victory. Strategy, terrain, and motivation often matter more than numbers. What's truly remarkable about the Persian Empire isn't just its vast size or its military campaigns, but how it changed the very concept of empire itself. Before Cyrus, empires were primarily instruments of exploitation. After him, they became vehicles for organizing diverse peoples under systems of relative tolerance and mutual benefit. When we look at our modern world, with its international organizations, its concepts of human rights, its balance between central governance and local autonomy, we're seeing echoes of Persian innovation that have reverberated through 25 centuries of human history. And what about you? What do you think was Persia's greatest mistake, underestimating the Greeks or their thirst for revenge? Was it Xerxes' pride that doomed the invasion? Or was it simply that the Greeks were fighting for something the Persians couldn't match, their freedom and very way of life? Perhaps the most important lesson from the Persian Empire is that conquest creates enemies, while respect creates allies. Cyrus understood this. Darius mostly remembered it, and Xerxes forgot it and paid the price. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, share it with friends who love history, and subscribe to the Legacy of Empires channel for more epic stories from our past. Until next time, and remember, history doesn't repeat itself, but it always teaches.